Fight me! Welcome, everybody. What's going on? How y'all doing? Welcome on in. How y'all living? Hey, thank y'all for joining me. Happy Thursday. Welcome in, everybody. Tonight, we continue the amazing streak. I gotta give it to all of these amazing guests that have come on. They have made every week better than the last, and we have had just amazing guests. I'm super excited tonight. Tonight continues Between Those Mundos, my interview series where I speak to first and second generation Latinos and Latinas here in the United States. We discuss the struggles we go through, our achievements, how we are cultivating the culture and just shaping the narrative of us here in the United States. Tonight, drumroll please, we have Escándalo, a multiple award-winning comedy group that has performed improvised telenovelas to sold-out crowds in Austin, San Antonio, and Miami. Their brand of comedy is interwoven with melodrama, intrigue, thrills, betrayal, and everything else that you expect from telenovelas. They currently have a residency with the Mexican American Cultural Center in Austin, Texas, and although there are more members in the group, tonight we have with us Andy Gonzalez Bendixon, Lara Galan Wells, and Alonso Salas. So thank you all so much for being here with us. Without further ado, let's go straight to this intro, and then when we are back, we will have them here. So make a lot of noise and give them a warm welcome to Between the Moon. Make some noise. We have Escándalo here with us. What's going on, y'all? Welcome on in.
Hello.
What's up?
What's up? How y'all doing?
Good. Thank you for having us. Thank you for inviting us.
I'm very excited to have the three of you on here. Can you please, introduce yourselves?
My name's Alonso. I've been with Escándalo the three of us have been with Escándalo from the beginning, but we all live here in Austin, Texas. I'm saying things about myself that has to do with all of us. But I'll say, let's see, my career's in tech, and then I started more with my creativity in theater and all of that stuff when I was in college, and I did drag.
Laura Galan Wells. I never thought I'd do anything on stage. I was like a mathlete. I thought I was gonna go into science and that kind of thing. And then like years later, a friend of mine did an improv show, and I was like, that looks so fun. I need to try it. And ended up in a show with these guys. And it actually started as a student show, and we ended up taking it and just running with it. So that was, I don't know, 4 years ago. How long has it been?
No more.
Like five.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah. It's been a while.
I'm Andy Gonzalez Bendixon. I too am from the original cast of Escándalo, as well as these two. I'm half Colombian, half Mexican, and movies are basically my life. It's what I do. It's what I've always loved my whole life, and the movie format in improv was, I think, like a thing I always liked. So Escándalo is the movie format Hispanicized. Latinoized. So it's just I couldn't be happier.
Hey, amazing. And already in the chat we got people saying Andy is the GOAT. They wanted me to say that, so I had to make sure I said that. Andy is the GOAT. Big shout out to Queen of Wands. Thank you so much for putting us on and introducing us. Queen is the reason why y'all are here tonight. Was the one who told me, hey, you should reach out to this group. They're super funny, super dope, and I'm excited that we're here. Thank you so much, Queen. So somebody asked, why Escándalo? Why the name Escándalo?
So we started off as a student show at a theater here in Austin, Texas called the Hideout Theater. It's where I think at one point we all took classes, but Laura and I we took all of our improv classes there. Andy took some classes there, but this was Hideout Theater specializes in narrative improv, so they put on like hour and a half improvised plays. They're comedies still, but it's more of a play. There's a narrative, there's a whole story, a main character, and ups and downs, a resolution at the end, etc. And so our student show was put together by two people that are not here, not part of the group or whatever, but they wanted to do a telenovela, like an hour and a half telenovela. So, you know, every telenovela, it's about scandals. It's about escándalos, you know, it's about the drama, it's about the plot twists, it's about, so this is like the perfect name for a telenovela show, you know?
Yeah, before every single show, we ask people, like, who's seen telenovelas before? We got to raise a hand. Okay, like, what are some things you see in telenovelas? And people yell, right? Love triangles, this. They always say scandals.
Yeah.
Obviously, right? Yeah. So the original directors, when they made it and they knew they were going to make a telenovela comedy show, it just made sense. Escándalo.
Yeah, perfect. Amazing name picking. And did the three of you grow up watching telenovelas, or what's like your relationship with, you know, that format and that medium?
Yeah, for me, like my favorite was Corazón Salvaje. Like there's been three. The middle one. Yeah, for anyone out there who's in the know.
The Thalia trilogy.
The
Marimar.
I watched all
of them.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I grew up watching them with my grandma, but I didn't know any of the names. I had no idea. I can't remember the names. I just remember I watched them with my grandma, and they were entertaining at the time, you know, like they got a lot of drama. It's a lot of just like action and just like there's the music, the scores that they do are like, and the zoom ins, like, but I don't remember the names.
Well, I was going to say that I did grow up watching them, but not necessarily by choice.
Yeah, I was going to say
it's just that my grandma and my mom chose what was on the TV, and it was on all day.
Really all day?
Primer Impacto, Walter Mercado,
Cristina.
Sábado Gigante.
Sábado Gigante. Would Sábado Gigante be considered like a telenovela?
Well, definitely not.
It's a variety show.
It's a game show, right? Variety game show. Yeah, it's so funny that like, because you look at the content of a lot of them and they're not really appropriate for kids, but grandmas and moms, they got no problem leaving them on.
Yeah, but we were watching this, especially and stuff, and it's like these scary stories and break-ins in houses. And
cool. And like there's a novela called Dos Mujeres y un Camino, and like the name of itself, the intro.
Two women,
like,
one path.
Yeah, and like the marketing for it's like these two like hot women like on two sides of the road, and it was like very like a sexualized show to begin with. Yeah. I mean, I was a kid when my parents would watch that.
Yeah, that's like I go back and I watch sometimes like Sábado Gigante clips, and that's something that always sticks out to me. There's a lot of like over sexualization of the women, and just like all the butt of the jokes are like, you know, one pretty woman, and then like the ugly woman is like the butt of the jokes, where like, oh, you got left with the ugly one, not the hot one. So what do you guys do?
I mean, there's there's the whole Ugly Betty,
Betty la Fea.
Colombia.
Yeah.
Betty la
Fea.
Fea.
I was gonna say, I guess half of that is like partly the culture. There was like a lot of machismo and stuff like that, but then it's also like the times. Like any comedy I watched from the 90s is a little more sexual to the point where it shouldn't be compared to stuff made today.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. It wasn't just Latinidad, for sure.
Yeah, it was just that's very true. And so in terms of the content that you guys make, your performances, do you try and scale that back? Is that something that like you're aware of when you're putting together shows?
Yeah, we try to stay at around PG-13. So if people ask us, we usually say we don't really recommend it for children. Teenagers are fine. There might be like some light swearing in Spanish. We don't swear in English, but you know, something might get thrown out here and there.
Well, we did have a very important conversation years ago that I remember. We don't like stray away from like being steamy and romantic because telenovelas are like, we're not afraid of that. We end most telenovelas in a kiss and stuff, but we realized very quickly like telenovelas always need a villain. And when we're being villains, we're always like very like over the top and funny or whatever. But villain tropes can usually fall into stereotypes. And especially if it was like drug lord, drug cartel, we actually did. We had a conversation. We sat ourselves down and we said, look, we're not doing our people any favors if every story has a drug lord and stuff like that. So we do keep in mind that our audience, sometimes young people, is seeing opportunities like Latinos doing funny stuff that they don't normally get to see. So be conscious to not be promoting the negative stereotypes. So, you know, it's it's a tech billionaire or whatever. They just happen to be Latino.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, another focus was to make it very, very bougie, because in film, like we're the cartel, or it's somebody like in poverty, and we just wanted our audiences to just see a different side.
Yeah, and I mean so there are a lot of like subjects and tropes in telenovelas that are like in my mind like pillars of telenovelas, right? Like power dynamics. It's like the girl from the barrio, the poor barrio, who goes to a rich high school, or it's like the poor girl who's in love with the rich guy.
Class
there's a lot of
struggle.
like power dynamics like that. And obviously, with the the novelas and the times and all that, there's a lot of things that are problematic. But I think for the most part, what we want to convey is like we want to represent ourselves also through our performances and through our craft. Like, our current morals. We're not trying to represent the morals of like people back then. It's like, and so a lot of our shows are more relevant to like the current time because we do live in this current time, and like we're not like people who are like abusive or like have like we're like problematic behaviors or things like that. So we're not gonna put that on stage for ourselves. Like the things we encounter, romance is a big part of telenovelas, right? And we throw in romances. Sometimes we throw in queer romances. Sometimes we throw in like romances with thruples and like things like that. And we're very like positive about it. We're not like shaming that ever. Like it's always in a positive way. And
no king shaming for sure.
Yeah,
no king shaming. And we actually had a conversation recently too, especially when there's like someone new, whether they're guesting with us or maybe we brought in someone new to the group. We have a conversation around boundaries and the boundaries that everyone has because it's improv, it's in the moment.
Yeah.
You never know.
You never know. But we had a conversation about basically because there can be a lot of fighting in our shows. I mean, the novelas also always have like some kind of violence, whether it's like people fighting or like slapping, like slap fights are a big thing, like people getting murdered, like it's part of that, and we put that in our show. But we had a conversation because it's like, okay, if someone's playing like a really evil character and they're really rude to like their minion or like their assistant, we maybe want to show like their evilness or their rudeness, but we don't want to like show that by like we can show that they are being like a really bad person towards their assistant, but we don't want to like show them be abusive to their assistant. Like we want to like show that kind of stuff. There's better ways to convey that.
That's awesome. And so I want to get into kind of each one of your personalities. Like, oh, sorry about that. Would you each say that you are extroverted, or what personality types do you have? Like, how do you feel that that brings that out in the performance? Whoever wants to start.
Well, we had a conversation just 3 or 4 days ago where I actually think everybody in the world is mostly ambivert, right? It just the word hadn't caught on as much as it's catching on now.
I never even heard it.
Well, yeah, it's like if it's a Venn diagram of extrovert and introvert, the middle is ambivert. Yeah. So it's like you get energy from being with people and stuff, sure, but every so often you just need a couple days by yourself to recharge.
Yeah, it's
a little bit of the both. I would say that's probably the best encapsulation of me. I do get energy from people. I do like being around people, but I mean, every so often you just need to recharge.
Yeah. Unplug. Yeah, definitely unplug from like, that's how I feel with social media a lot of times. I'm like, not going to go on social media today or not going to read the news and just going to unplug from the matrix for a bit.
Mental health.
Yeah.
I feel like we have a lot of extroverts in our troupe, but kind of if you just, I've had these conversations across lots of improvisers, and it seems like introverts are more common, which is really interesting.
When it comes to improv?
Yes. I've also seen, I saw it in my class with my group of people that took all the levels together. I mean, we had multiple people that came into the level 1 class day 1, and they were like, I'm not here to be an improviser. I'm just here to challenge myself. I'm just here to like, try to face certain fears, etc., and then they go through the classes and they end up loving improv, and then they're like very active,
Yeah.
like improvisers. So it is those people are like introverts, but they kind of fall in love with the craft and with improv.
That's crazy that they say that. We actually haven't talked about that, but I've been saying that for a while too. I remember when I was taking the first classes, the people in your class are split pretty evenly, and 50% are like actors, like very clearly artists, and the other 50% were like lawyers, teachers, people that just could benefit from better public speaking. And in the early days, in the first 2 levels, they were the better improvisers because they would listen, they would take notes, and they would apply it, where the actors were still just ready to show off how good they were, you know?
Yeah. It's so interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, sorry. So I always lived my whole life thinking I was an introvert, like hard, like identified really hard with introvert. But then the pandemic taught me that I'm actually an extrovert.
You were missing it?
Well, no. I had this cycle apart from other like mental health stuff, but I do these like I'd go to work, maybe do improv after, like have events, and then I'd come home and I'd be exhausted, and I'd come home and not be able to do anything because I just thought I was exhausted from the day, and therefore didn't have any energy. So then the pandemic hits, we're all at home. And then like 3 months pass by, and I'm like, I've just been at home. Like, why do I still not have any energy? And it's like, 'cause I haven't been around people.
Yeah.
And that's like, the light bulb kind of turned on, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm an extrovert. Like, I do get a lot of energy from being around people, and I didn't even realize that.
I've always known I was an extrovert. Like, if the house is empty, I don't feel comfortable at all.
So you feel like life of the party?
I don't know how to call myself life of the party, but I definitely need to be around people for a lot of the day. And I do have kids and husband, so I have people around me all the time, and I like that. Like I have 5 kids. I was like, more kids. I love chaos.
I want more kids. And so how do you think your respective personalities kind of translate to the performance? Like, at first, kind of when you first started, was it a little hard to break out of that shell, or, explain your experiences with that?
It is a little different for everybody. And sometimes, it's hard to describe like how you are on stage because like it's so in the moment. You're not really reflecting that on yourself unless you really go back and watch yourself. I don't watch myself if we record. So that might be able to better tell you how I am on stage than how I think I'm on stage. But I feel like I'm the type of improviser that I'm not like necessarily playing this very distinct character than myself. I feel like I'm very much playing myself a lot of the time. And I'm just kind of like taking a different perspective or like trying to think differently as like this person or that person. Like if I'm a villain, I'm trying to think more like that villain, but I'm still kind of acting more as myself.
I definitely think I've said it many times. I think that part of the reason why this group has found as much success as it has is because everybody has different strengths. And it's very lucky. Everyone has very different strengths. We rotate roles, by the way. It's improv, so you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes one of us is the narrator. Sometimes one of us is the villain. Sometimes one of us is the love interest, the protagonist. It's always different. But if one of us is doing tech, for example, you can tell what was missing that day. That's what I'm saying. So if there was a very steamy romance and a lot of chest hair, that's because Alonso was on stage. That's what Alonso.
I want to go to that show.
Lots of steamy romance, yeah. And I mean, we all have our different strengths. Like he said, maybe you guys can point mine out better. If I had to say for myself, maybe I focus on like wacky characters and story. I love story. I'm usually adding a twist or moving shit. But all of us together have this very cohesive amount of strengths. It's crazy.
And when Andy says tech, our show has like if you go to any like regular improv shows, just like people on the stage playing games or trying to finding the funny, etc. Our show has a little bit more of a production because it is a more longer. Our show is like an hour to an hour and a half, and we purposefully have more of a production. So we have a a sound effects person, like an audio person that's in a tech booth
that is improvising with us live.
Yeah, they're improvising live with us. We have like sound effects all set up and music, so they sometimes go along with what we're doing. Like if we're starting a scene and it's like the evil dude, then they're gonna play creepy music. But sometimes we're like in a scene together and they'll just start playing romantic music. So now we have to be romantic.
We have to,
So,
very funny.
So they're very much playing with us, so that's what he means when he says tech.
Yeah, for sure. And improv tech are also improvising. So they're adding with the music, with their sound effects, that kind of thing. And then, Andreas, for me, I'm a writer too, like Andy, and I tend to also like kind of shaping the story. That's very fun for me, by coming in and like maybe a little quick, like wrapping up of what, a subplot or something. I think I tend to be a villain more than other people.
More often than others.
I just have that evil face, I guess, naturally, like. So that's really fun. I mean, I'll sometimes be the romantic interest or like the protagonist, but that's rare for me. I really enjoy support.
If Alonso is romance more time than not, Laura is villain more
times than not.
Yeah.
And what would you say? What about for you, Andy? What would you say more often than not you are?
I would say I'm usually Timon and Pumbaa.
Yeah.
The third party that kind of helps, but is on the sides.
Oh, okay.
So the comedy relief type of person, the goofier of the party.
Okay, those characters are necessary for the adventure, They're the ones that take you along the adventure.
Usually I'm the one killed and it hurts.
Oh, no. Damn, they get...
So like when Laura's there, like, we will feel less of like a villain or someone else has to step up to that. And same if Andy's not there, we're not going to get the same kind of goofiness. So some of us have to try to bring that still, or maybe it's just a different type of show because it's improv. So it's kind of, it is what
never the same. Yeah, that's awesome. It's never the same show. So anybody who comes to see you is always coming to see a new show. And that's what's awesome about improv. A question from Queen. As improv actors, they probably know the phrase yes and. Do they use that philosophy in their daily lives?
Exclusively.
Yeah.
Exclusively.
So.
I'm in like 6 or 7 different writers groups. Laura writes a lot. And that's something I tell the writers that aren't improvisers. It goes further if you can add to a pitch that was given than if you just naysay a pitch. So if a pitch doesn't work, say why, and maybe this will make it better. Or if it does work, get excited and add to it. But you need to give more than just be like, no, yes.
Right.
And I think early in improv, like it really, like I think everyone has just this like moment where you're like, yes, and is so profound and just like extends to everything in your life. Like I feel like everyone needs to take at least,
I agree.
1, 2, 3 levels of improv. You learn so much. And you realize like it really just it's a philosophy of like everyone has their gifts and their strengths and that you need to accept them, and it's a gift to you.
I was thinking about this the other day and I was like, dang, because one, like improv is therapeutic. It's very much used in therapeutic ways, across the world or whatever. But I was thinking about it, I'm like, improv, like in improv classes, is just like practicing how to be a fun human being. Like how to be someone to be comfortable around and a fun human being. Like that's really what it is.
And stop stopping things. It's like be a creative energy. And I don't mean creative like creatives. I mean like creates, like additive.
Like, don't be boring.
Yeah.
I think for me, like the yes and stuff, I feel like it's like really embedded in my personality. I have a piece like keeper type of personality. So when I'm like with the friend and they're like, we're like trying to decide food, and if I've like been craving Chinese and then they're like, ooh, there's this new Mexican place, I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, let's go try it out. Like I'm very willing to go with the flow. So I feel like yes and very much is embedded in like all parts of my life.
That's awesome, because I'm like the same way. I'm real go with the flow, just kind of go with whatever happens, and like I'm willing to like go off the beaten path just to like see like what comes of it. What's this adventure? What kind of advice would you give to someone who is like real rigid with like, you know, their schedule, or somebody who just like goes out and like goes to a restaurant and orders the same thing, and it's like real hard for them to break out of like these patterns?
Well, can I give a very, very quick anecdote that this made me think of?
Yes, of course.
Which is, I was watching an interview. I think it was Colbert. I don't remember. It was one of the talk show hosts, and it was with Josh Brolin when he was promoting the Avengers movies, when he was promoting Thanos, and they got to this topic where he says that everything is funnier if you're eating. Improvisation is funnier while you're eating. So they said, let's put it to the test, and they brought him out some pretzels. And he tried to do a scene with Stephen Colbert. And I remember this perfectly. And Stephen Colbert goes, okay, let's try this. And then the first thing he says, he goes, I knew it was you, Guido. And then he's like eating the pretzel and he goes, no, you didn't. And my name isn't Guido.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got a couple laughs and then it kind of died off. And then the segment was over. Mm-hmm. And I instantly said to my friend, I was like, he did 2 denials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He said, you didn't know, and my name. Well, where are we supposed to go from
That's
here?
it. The story's over. Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, he did. This is someone that doesn't do improv. Great actor, obviously doesn't do improv. So instead, you already are Guido, and they knew. Now, what are you gonna say? Mm-hmm. That's what makes them keep going. That's the point of yes and. Together, we are building more. One person stopping something kills energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest takeaway. It drains energy. It's funner and it's more creative to say yes. And
yeah. And I guess for some people it's a little bit harder when like they take themselves a little too serious. Like I guess maybe some people just like don't like to put themselves in a position where, you know, like they could be goofy or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think like kind of tied into improv being therapeutic. A lot of that sometimes is just like fear and like internal fear and shame. Like a lot, you know, people that are very like rigid or have a very like strict schedule and think for themselves, like that's very comfortable. And when you're saying like yes and to something new, to a new experience, like there's, you know, that's just like a pitch black like room. You don't know what's gonna happen, and that's, you know, that's scary.
For some, yeah,
it is scary. It's
so
very scary.
I think some of it is like. You know, my advice would be like, you know, like challenge yourself, like face the fear, you know.
Lauda, any advice for people who are just like, you know, real hard for them to break out of like their mold and patterns?
Yeah, I would say there's this flow chart that I like to put on Twitter now and then, and it says, I want to do this thing, but I'm scared. And then the other side says, do it scared. And I think that's like I consider myself like a generalist. I like to try lots of different things in life, lots of experiences, and I'm always scared. Like it's always scary to do the new thing, but you know, it's just that advice of just do it scared anyway, and that fear passes quickly, and the rewards are worth it. I think with improv, especially in the early levels, people don't realize like they don't just toss you on the stage. It's actually months before you're ever on a stage. You're actually just in a room and playing really fun, what's called like improv games. So it's very low pressure. Like you never have to perform on a stage if you don't want to. I would urge everyone to give it a try. It's really fun. Most improv theaters have trial classes. I know Hideout Theater does, our home theater.
So yeah, kind of back to what we were saying earlier, you know, that's why you see like lawyers trying improv, because they live these very like hard, more rigid lives, and it's like they're like, I want to challenge myself, so they go to an improv class.
And to not panic under pressure.
Right.
You start to learn to be off the cuff more. I'm nervous before every single show. There's even a joke about it. I think it's so stressful, and I get an ulcer before every show. But once you've stepped out and the adrenaline kicks in, you like trust your muscles. You trust the tool belts that you've built. And that's what I think is good for a lawyer who gets caught on an argument that didn't work or on whatever, right? It's like, be okay with that. Be okay with going with the flow.
Yeah. You always got to pivot.
I think also in a way you transform, right? Like eventually when you really just let yourself relax into the improv, you're a character. So you're not, Laura the scared person. You're, Esmeralda the evil villain or whatever it is. And I think it takes a while to get to that point, but you get to where you just get on the stage and that switch happens. And now you're just that character.
Awesome.
Or like my dad used to say, ponte las pilas.
Ponte las pilas. Yeah. That's a big one that my wife says. She's Colombian.
Yeah.
And she's like, ponte las pilas. Like, we gotta start doing things.
Yeah.
So I got two questions, but real quick, thank you for being here, Thelma. Welcome in. They asked, who is your favorite novels, Villano or Villana?
Ooh, that's a tough one. You don't have one at all? Like our favorite novel. I'm going to go with Lord of the Rings just because I was actually chatting about that earlier today with some people. They were saying, what's the oldest fantasy or like the longest written fantasy you love or read? And I was saying Lord of the Rings. So there, you've got Sauron.
Yeah, I don't know if it's asking like the one that most stuck with us or what scared us the most or what, but I have an answer that kind of gives away my Hispanicism. And word Hispanic chosen specifically over Latino, like very much including Christianity and stuff, which is something I noticed ever since I was little, which is like demon related stuff always scared me more, right? And it probably came from my dad, who was super, super Catholic growing up and stuff. But it's like, if we ever talked about nightmares, his nightmares always had to do with that. So like monsters and stuff, that's stupid. Monsters don't exist. But then you say the word demon, and he's like, "Ay."
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So there's something about that kind of used to give me the heebie-jeebies more than anything else.
Oh, hell yeah.
And like, you don't believe in gay people, but demons don't.
Yeah.
Don't do anything to piss off Jesus.
Yeah.
What was yours, Alan?
No, that was my answer.
Okay. Like books in general, I mean, books were a big escape for me when I was in high school. I mean, the biggest escape being Harry Potter, but I won't name that for various reasons. So I'll say two books that really stuck out with me. One was the Aragon Inheritance. It was
Dragon?
Yeah.
From the book?
Yeah, it's a set of 4 books. It was originally a trilogy, but he ended up doing the 4th one. I love dragons, and the depiction of dragons in that series, like they're super intelligent. Like they carry on their wisdom and their memories and their experiences through generations, magically. So I love that book. Another one that I was thinking about earlier is actually, I think it's called the Bartimaeus Trilogy. It's kind of about this kid who's like an apprentice. He gets like, I think like brought from the streets or something, but he's an apprentice to like a wizard. And in this book, like people with magic get magic by summoning like demons and like basically capturing them and then using them for their powers or whatever. So this kid like ends up summoning like this very powerful demon and then kind of creates a friendship with them or whatever.
Chainsaw Man.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I have a lot of villains in like anime that I think are like really well written. I think they're just like so good.
Dragon Ball Z was my childhood.
Oh, of course, man. Yeah, I don't know if you guys seen like Attack on Titan is about to come back this weekend.
Oh yeah, of course,
that has a great protagonist to antagonist character with Eren.
That's creepy.
Yeah, man, I love it. So Thelma said mine is Catalina Krill with the eye patch. Which one's that one from Thelma?
We know she's Escándalo.
Oh, okay. She's in Escándalo as well?
If it's the Thelma we know.
Thelma Rosana?
Yeah.
That's what we got. Yeah. Oh, La Llorona, someone said as well. La Llorona is one that my wife has definitely told me about a lot.
Which just got a Blumhouse movie, right?
Oh, did it? La Llorona got
La
a...
Llorona?
Oh, I got to check that out because, yeah, that's one that my wife definitely mentions a lot. Las Momias de Guanatajo, those are scary as well. There's a lot of good inspiration out there. Damn. And to go back a little bit, you had briefly touched upon it, but do each of you have like a pre-show ritual or something that you do to kind of like help ease any nerves that you get before you get on stage?
That's a good question. I'm gonna say this is something we do before every show, and for me, it's very soothing. We do a couple different things. One is there's a count off game that we do, and it's something a lot of improvisers do to make sure you're all kind of on the same page and connected to each other, because connection is extremely important. So we close our eyes and stand in a circle like this, all arms interlinked, and then we just count, and we each will say, without planning it, 1, 2, 3, and it's crazy when you just feel like the energy in the room shift.
You can't speak at the same time, by the way. That's the point.
Yeah. Sorry,
You have to
can't
start
speak at
over.
the same time.
And you're trying to get to like 21. So
Yeah, it's like giving other space, but
Yeah,
also
listening.
listening, and it just becomes like a very intuitive, like almost telepathic thing. And when things click and you're really connected, you just are saying the numbers rhythmically one at a time. No one's talking over each other, and you get to really high numbers.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Another thing is that we'll say, "I have your back," and we'll pat each other on the back, and just that little connection too really helps with nerves. And we'll do that like right at the end, right before we go on.
yeah, right before we go.
I wanted
awesome.
to mention that I got your back is a thing that all improvisers will know. Right before you step out, you literally have to touch everyone's back and tell them, I got your back. And I was talking about it recently. I just did this play that was a play. It was written. It's theater, right? And, I'm nervous before every show, and people started saying, I got your back, and I was saying it back, and it's cute. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, in theater, that's not true. If you're out there and you start choking and it's not my scene, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah, because you think they're just going.
I can't help you. You have to get your lines out. But what we're telling each other in improv is no one is going to leave you drowning. If your scene out there is a stinker, 3 of us are going to come out and make that make sense. We're going to be those ducks that you were talking about. Whatever. We got your back.
Yeah.
So it's literal. It's very camaraderie. I love that.
That's awesome. And, well, Thelma also, I think you forgot one. They said pre-show tacos and Fantas.
It has become a ritual for our group dinners, and it's been very cute. Family
That's
dinner.
awesome. That's great. I think my pre-ritual, I'd have to be like no eating for like an hour before, because I don't want to go up there with like any bubble guts or anything like that. But that's amazing in terms of like the bond that you've created and just helping each other be confident, knowing that, if we go out there, I got you. Don't worry. Like if I see something, I'll jump in there and I'll try and make it make sense, and like we'll just keep going with the flow. So don't worry about it. In terms of the troupe, when did you all start, feeling that level of comfort with each other up on stage and performing with each other?
Immediately, no?
Yeah, I mean, so
Immediately.
we were a student show. We were cast, so we didn't necessarily come together and be like, "Hey, you want to do this thing with me?" Like we were cast, so we were kind of brought together. But we rehearsed for 2 months before the show went on. I think, like every weekend for 2 months. So, and that's just like rehearsal. There's no pressure. A lot of what we did in the beginning were like intimacy exercises, like legit intimacy exercises of like just standing with each other, looking in each other's eyes for
No
like 30
funnies.
seconds.
Don't break. Look into
Yeah,
each other's
like,
eyes and feel each other.
Very genuine connections. One of the first things that I remember we did was this thing called the truth circle. You basically just stand around in a circle, one at a time. One person goes on the inside, and everybody gets to ask a question, and then you kind of answer as truthfully as you can. But it's a way to like get to know somebody, and you can ask them something serious or something not serious. So there was a lot of like just a lot of like hanging out, basically from the rehearsals, and then a lot of actual intention, trying to connect.
And something that was really on theme to your show was that we had a kind of pre-show party, I remember, and everyone started talking about how they had restrained their Latinidad in different ways.
I was about to say that.
Yeah. Being here in the U.S., being diaspora, like, being away from family. And for some people, like, their families pushed them to, like, hide their Latinidad, like they were assimilating and that kind of thing. And or even if you hadn't been pushed, like you just maybe hadn't been around other Latinos in like a really long time, right? And I remember like there were tears. Like everyone just
Yeah.
had like this really deep pain from that we didn't realize we had, and we were able to talk about it with each other. Like I think that's one of our biggest connections, is that like for us when we're with each other, it's like we're with family.
Yeah, I do think that us being a like diversity niche group completely had a lot to do with that too, because we all bonded so quickly about being Latinos, so quickly, be it troubles, be it jokes, be it whatever. And it wasn't the first show for a lot of us, and it's definitely not the only show since. Everyone has done shows, but not every cast tells each other we're family, we're family. And this one happened like very quickly.
Yeah.
I think it totally has to do with that too.
And everyone came together right away, or was there anybody, you know, who was there originally and may have left afterwards?
Oh,
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, after this, when the student show was over, you know, once we had our run, we decided, hey, let's try to stay together. Like a lot of us had interest in keeping the group and trying to keep this going. I think like half of the people left.
yeah, post the student show, we got the blessing from the original directors, but then we made our own logo. We made our own, right? We just kind of took it into our way. We're a cast of 9 right now. 4 are originals.
Okay.
Yeah. So people left, you know, because they don't want to continue or for personal reasons or whatever. And then we found more people. We were like a cast of like 9 or 10. This was before the pandemic. You know, one of the things, I mean, we noticed from the student show our connection, right, and how much that impacts our shows and comes through our shows. So, looking for new cast members, we were like, we have to connect with them. We have to, you know, feel like we can or want to be friends with them. Like we can't, you know, it has to be somebody that fits.
Right.
And so we did, and we had like a cast of like 9 or 10, and then the pandemic hit. And you know everybody's lives got kind of turned around, so there were a handful of people that didn't come back after the pandemic, and we expanded our troupe again since
then. And so 2-part question. You know, you're at 9 right now. Is there like a limit that you like to keep it around so that you're just like a tighter knit community and like a tighter knit family? And then second part is like, what are you looking for in terms of like when somebody comes to like, I don't know if you guys do auditions, or in terms of like them joining, like what are you looking for in another cast member?
Well, we know that almost every show has a possibility of ending in a kiss, so we want to make sure they're good kissers right off the bat.
He's joking.
It's obviously being Hispanic, being Latino. You were saying how big the family. I mean, Hispanics have big families, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. We never talked about it. I think 10 might be a cap.
Yeah, I think 10 is a good
Right?
number. I mean, you know, this is a group, like we're not like a big organization that has like these established leaders and people that this is their job. Like we're just a group of people that have done this together. So managing 10 people is a lot. You know, trying to have schedules and make sure that people are going to be, you know, there for things and stuff like that. So I think 10 is good. And then in terms of finding people, like I said, like, you know, we don't have this like super formal auditioning process where we are like, you know, bringing people through like a cast, like casting or anything like that. All of the people that we've brought on, you know, in general, have been people that we know or we kind of really knew about. We got to know. If they were like new, if somebody knew them or knows them well and was kind of vouching for them or whatever, the rest of us that don't know them, we're like, hey, let's have them do like a couple of shows with us, do a few rehearsals, maybe a show or 2 with us, so that we can see how we mesh, how our energies are. I want to get to know somebody as a person. I want to see what kind of person they are, like, you know. So
But
it's a lot of that.
On that note, though, it does show how small the circles are. And in Austin, like we do want a new cast member to be Latino, at least to be Hispanic, right? Some way or another to understand what we're doing in the telenovelas. Well, the circle of Latino artists is quite small. And Latino improvisers is even smaller. So it actually also points to that. Like it's not necessarily the biggest pool. But you know, it's people we get to know with and play with, and you know, it's usually that.
Yeah, and we do have a rotating guests. Yeah, we have a lot of guests that we rotate through. I would say when we do add a cast member, it's usually someone fell off. had to leave, moved out of town, and then it's a very organic kind of thing.
Yeah,
we don't do auditions or anything like that.
I think the lowest we've had was like 5 or 6.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
6. So
Yeah.
I think a minimum for us when we do shows is like we don't want less than 5 people doing the show. Like less than 5 people cannot do an hour and a half show, a full telenovela, right? So
full telenovela,
yeah,
right?
So that's kind of how we try to think about our numbers.
That makes sense.
We do have to have, we have the main protagonist and a couple of their, the main cast, their friends or whatever, and then the villain,
narrator.
and then maybe one or two hench people, the narrator, the tech, and support class. The support people will sometimes play up to 6 characters, And one of our rules is you can kill the support whenever you want, So there's a lot of murder.
Gotcha. So yeah, somebody might just drop off. You need somebody else to still be there.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I imagine there's also like stuff off the stage that you guys have to do because you do perform in different cities. It seems like you travel as well. When it comes to stuff like that, how did you figure out like how to just get started? How to get invited to these places to perform? Is there somebody that's doing kind of like outreach like that?
Yes and no.
Yeah, kind of.
Yes and no. So we were kind of talking about this earlier, but I mean, I think one thing that I'm grateful for is that the handful of us that are like original cast, we kind of stepped into various kind of leader roles naturally. Like Andy handles a lot of our social media stuff. Lara does a lot of like outreach and connecting with people and managing like what guests are going to show up when, etc. I do I think a lot about like the production of the show and what the stage is going to look like. And I basically like, carry all of our stage props in my car like all the time. And then one of our other members, Cindy, she's like, she's great. She has a very like administrative bone.
Yeah, forms, grants,
she's
anything
great
that
at that stuff. She naturally fell into that. So we kind of like had those various skills, thankfully, and so we've been able to like organically organize ourselves, and obviously we've had to have conversations, and we still can improve in how we are organized. But Cindy, Laura have like reached out to places, and we have connections. Like when we play at San Antonio, like we make connections with people. We've done a festival in Miami a couple times. We've kept that connection going. So that's why we went back the second time, because we kept that kind of communication. But also we have people that just reach out to us, which is like amazing. Like I'm kind of in awe that like which is what we were talking about earlier.
That's the biggest thing. When we were a student show, any improviser knows this. When you're a troupe that's just a troupe that wants to get time, you submit to every theater begging for 15 minutes.
Literally.
We are lucky enough to be in the position where we're deciding what requests to take. We get that many requests per month, which is lucky. 1 or 2 per month. I'm not trying to make it sound bigger than it is. But the answer is mostly what he said. I think the majority of us have multiple hats. I think Escándalo would benefit from a manager. That would be fantastic. We're kind of at the point where we need a central thing, but we don't have that. We just, all of us know that growing needs have meant growing hats, basically.
And also, the thing that I'm amazed at too, that also super grateful for, is when people reach out to us, like Andy said, a regular troupe, improv troupe is signing up for, these weekends, like asking, hoping to be on stage for 15-20 minutes. We have people that reach out to us and they're like, hey, we have this hour and a half slot that we want you to do.
Like, can you guys please fill this?
Right, like they know us well enough to know that our show isn't a 15-minute show. It's a bigger show. And we've had people reach out to us and say, hey, we have this like 30-minute slot, and we've done those as well. But
that's
I'm
amazing.
grateful that like people.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. We've reached, like, if it was a kind of bell curve, we've reached a point where like now we get stuff directed toward us instead of having to do so much like
Grinding.
casting your fishnet. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's a testament to y'all because they've obviously seen what you bring to the stage and they want you to come fill in those performance slots. And, it's the same thing for content creators or podcasters, anybody else. Right now I'm doing this, but as soon as I get off this tomorrow, what am I doing? I got to, cut up clips. I got to make things for Instagram, for TikTok. I got to make things for different formats. And then I got to reach out to people and I got to try and get people to like share it. And like, you're a content creator, you're an improv actor, but then once you step off the stage, you have to wear so many different hats because,
The business person.
Yeah, exactly. Becoming the business. And like, it's one thing to create it, but if nobody sees what you're creating, it doesn't do you so much goods. You got to really market it.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, part of the stress in my ulcers is hoping we have an audience.
Yeah.
And then if we do have an audience, we've been lucky to always have a semi-stacked house. Then I'm like, hope it doesn't suck today. Here we go.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of stuff on Instagram. We even have like ads that we roll through like on Instagram. So we try to do outreach for like shows in that way.
And did that ever happen like maybe towards the beginning of when you started, like kind of just like a no person show, like just performing for like a few people in the crowd? Like how's that work since so much of it is like audience interaction?
I actually don't know if ever for Escándalo. I don't remember one, but I've done 3 people shows.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's probably what I like when you can't fall asleep and you remember all your cringe memories. That's when one of the ones comes back. The 3-person improv shows I've done.
No, we've been really fortunate. I think maybe if we had like a really, really empty audience, like it was raining and maybe it was a poorly advertised show, like maybe 10 people at the least.
That's probably our bad ones.
Like that would be a bad.
Which is
like,
lucky.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's pretty fair.
Yeah, but I feel like it's something that anybody that does improv is going to encounter at some point or another because it's sometimes people just aren't out. Sometimes it's like if it's like some kind of like weather event and it's really cold or people aren't going to show up or whatever. But sometimes like the best shows are when there is like 2 people, 3 people in the audience because you kind of at least for me I'm like there's less pressure. Let's treat this as like almost like a rehearsal. Let's just have fun. Like it doesn't matter.
I remember I did a show the day after Trump was elected president.
Fun.
It was like maybe 4 people and there was like sadness in the air.
Oh, you could feel it. And
I remember that very well.
You remember that one? And so in terms of like, I'd love to know like how, the demographics of Texas and Austin kind of being like a more liberal city within such a big red area. Like how is that kind of factored into your performances and what you speak up on stage?
100%.
Yeah.
I think we can kill in Austin, we can kill in San Antonio, and maybe don't venture much different than that type of thing. There's like a lot of blue bubbles, right? Blue bohemian bubbles in a very red state. I think our San Antonio audiences are actually better than Austin. Like
there's more Latinos
because the population skews more either Mexican or Chicano, right? So Austin audiences, everything is a joke. Just saying that you used fabuloso gets laughs. Just saying Virgencita and San Antonio, right? So I mean, it is something we keep in mind. And when we travel, like Miami,
big Latino demographic,
right, exactly.
Right.
So it is something we keep in mind, and it's something that we talk about. I'm not sure that it would play everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, if you'd ever feel, I guess, any pressure, like, if there are people in the crowd that may not be Hispanic and have never watched telenovelas, like, how do you get them to relate to the content and to the performance?
Yeah. I mean, I will say sometimes we don't. Like, we're not making a telenovela improvised show for white people. We're making our content is Latinos, like for Latino people, that's why our show is bilingual. And sometimes it skews more English, sometimes it skews more Spanglish, but sometimes we don't. Like sometimes we don't know that there's like non-Latino people in the audience, so we also it's like whatever, but we don't know. But But we're not like, oh, I mean, we try to be audience conscious. So sometimes, but we're not trying to like appease any certain type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other side of that is that sometimes we are like very aware of that, and if we're being very audience conscious, like we throw that into like the humor, like if we have a narrator that day, then when something gets said in Spanish, the narrator is gonna like translate
Yeah,
it, and it's like it plays into the humor.
I think the difference is mostly just the humor, right? Like there's universal human truths that kind of come through. I think we have non-Hispanics at every single show, and the non-Hispanics don't laugh at the sana sana colita de rana reference, right?
Yeah.
But the big twist, the big reveal that he's alive, and the big romance that shouldn't have happened and happened hits just as hard to all cultures. And I mentioned the movie format when we first started. I think movies are like a big thing of part of my life. My brothers and I all bonded through movies. I think that's the biggest thing. I think when people see a full circle, a full story, it hits regardless of culture. The culturalisms, I think, just make funnier funnies for those that get it. That's what I think.
Yeah, and our non-Latinx people in the audience, like they're laughing. It's just, they might not get those like little references, the nuances, the little Spanish pepper in. But they're still laughing through the show.
But again, like we're not gonna not do those things because we have like a white person on the show,
Right.
Like, we're still gonna do all
Of
that.
course. You got to stay true to what Escándalo is, and that's great that regardless of who's in the crowd, you're still staying true to yourselves and just out there to have the best performance you could have. And if people laugh, that's great.
Telenovela.
Exactly. Yeah. And in terms of Latinidad, are you all first or second generation?
We had a conversation.
Different.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bigger conversation about what is the definition of first generation or not. I call myself an immigrant because I'm an immigrant. I was born in Mexico. I came to Texas when I was 6.
Okay.
So I don't consider necessarily myself first generation. I guess in a way, for people that define it as like the first generation that like went through an education system in the U.S., then in that way, yes. But I mean,
you weren't born here. Like sometimes people would say like first generation is like your parents were born in a other country and then came here and you were born here.
Yeah, it's like the first generation that was born here. Yeah.
I think the same. I think I could call myself culturally a Chicano. I lived all the same pop culture and the same hardships and adversity as all of us. But I'm an immigrant. I was born in Bogota. I moved here later in life.
I guess I'm the one born in the U.S. of the three of us here. I was born 2 miles from the river, Rio Grande, in Texas. And for me, I'm first generation on my dad's side and second generation on my mom's side.
Nice.
But I consider both of the sister cities on either side of the river like my hometown. We probably spent more time on the Mexico side because that's where most of our family was. So most of my, I have memories obviously of running around in Del Rio, my hometown in Texas, but also tons of memories of, running around playing with cousins and on the Mexico side. So for me, I definitely had a very like 50-50 bicultural kind of experience. As when I was little, because then I grew up mostly overseas. But
and then in terms of like growing up, childhoods, if we can go more into that, like in the household, I'm assuming parents, playing their respective like Spanish music and stuff, and then speaking Spanish, and then going to school learning English. Was that kind of what it was like?
Yeah. And so my family and I, we're from a rancho. Like we're poor from like a little village, like the rancho. So coming to the U.S., like my parents, I mean, I would say they still fight assimilating, to be honest. But where I'm from, it's like it's regional Mexican music. It's bandas, it's cumbias, it's norteñas, like all of that. And I actually grew up with like I assimilated very naturally, to be honest. But I also like, the first time I heard like pop music in the US was like, Sailor Moon transformation moment for me almost. Like I became obsessed with pop music, Britney, Gwen Stefani, then no doubt, and I remember my parents being like, "Why are you listening to that music? That's white people music. You have to listen to our music."
Uh-huh.
So always regional Mexican music, always played, like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what
Yeah,
about
and
for
then
the?
for me,
Yeah.
so my mom, when she was a kid, because she came up in the U.S. in school, and they would like whack her with a ruler on her hand if she spoke Spanish,
Oh
and that
damn.
made her really angry. So she was like, when I was born, then even though my parents are both bilingual,
Mm-hmm.
they decided to only speak to me in Spanish. So it'd be really, really, really ingrained, because because of that experience. My mom, she's like, she will know Spanish.
Yeah.
I learned English in kindergarten. That was the plan. Mine was kind of weird because we ended up moving to Spain, and I ended up learning English in Spain after I learned German, and it was just. But I just had a kind of a strange experience. The German's gone now, but I just think it's really funny that I went to Madrid to learn English in kindergarten, and it was just immersion. They just my mom knew, they
Did
just tossed me in kindergarten and I'd learn English.
did their
And it was
accent stick to you at all? Like the Spanish accent?
So I have an accent. If I go to the border and start talking to other people, there's like a border accent that I will have. But my accents for me have been very transient, like very weird. Like I actually spent most of my childhood in South Africa, so I used to have like more of a British accent for a while. So
Oh wow,
yeah, I'm
you
just
got you traveled a lot.
yeah.
And then for you, Andy?
Yeah, my house was very, very, very strict Spanish only. It's something that today I'm very grateful for. My dad's thinking was that they're going to learn English in school, in the radio, in the TV, in their cartoons, and everything. So don't let them lose their Spanish. I've sensed, today I've met maybe 5 or 6 different friends that are like culturally Latino and Hispanic, but they don't speak Spanish because their parents prohibited it. And today, in today's age, they all resent their parents. Every one of them is resentful about not speaking it more. So I actually am not resentful. I love it. I think I have very good Spanish because of it. My wife is gringa. We have all the intention to speak to our kids in Spanish in the house, stuff like that. So I think it was smart.
Yeah, for sure. It was 100%. That's something like I remember as a kid, like, because I would come home from school and then my grandma would put me to write in these Libro Nacho books, which is how I would learn Spanish. And at the time, I was like, oh, my God, I just got home from school. Now I got to do more work. And then she would put me and I would hate it. I would be so mad. But as I got and then I became a teenager and all my friends were white. Like I didn't speak really Spanish for a long time outside of just speaking to it with my grandma whenever I got home. But I kind of lost a lot of it. And it wasn't until I got married and then I started being with like my wife's family that I was like, wow, my Spanish sucks. I should have learned more Spanish. I should have done more Nacho Libre. And but I've learned a lot thanks to her just being in the household because it's really just practice. It's really just being around someone and just constantly doing it. And when I was a teenager, I wasn't doing it at all. Like I could get by with like the most basic, but it was something that I'm like super grateful now. But definitely as a kid, I just remember being around my friends and being like, oh man, I don't want to speak Spanish in front of them. They're going to start asking me to translate this and they're going to ask me this and they're going to make fun of me for this. And like, I just didn't want to do it. I wanted to be like just fully assimilated. And something that this show often talks about is kind of the feeling of not feeling Latino or Latina or Latinx enough. The struggles that we go through, because I know a lot of people now that don't speak Spanish, but they are Hispanic and what's it called? They get called no sabo kids. They get called all types of different things and like a lot of just like, insults. And like if they say anything like even a little bit grammatically incorrect, it's just like jokes. And I would love to like hear a little bit from each of you on like kind of that topic of like, being between those mundos, like the American culture and the Latino, Latina, Latinx culture. Like, what has that been like for you and like how you identify and how you feel?
I have a very specific example that it makes me think of, which is, so I'm pretty racially ambiguous. I'm pretty light skinned, which, let me privilege in a lot of stuff. If someone assumes I'm white, they just won't pick on me like they would have if I looked browner and stuff. But people that did know I was an immigrant, most definitely. I saw the racism my whole life. I had a lot of racist teachers that said some stuff you'd never believe. But I guess what I want to highlight is being an immigrant and not necessarily Chicano wasn't necessarily any different in that, like I'm half Mexican and I'm half Colombian, but all my life to my Colombian cousins, we're the Mexican ones. They make fun of us. Our accent is so Mexican. Our accent is so Mexican. But I speak Spanish in the States and people are like, oh, are you Colombian? So it depends where you are. It always depends where you are, right?
Yeah.
It's never going to be enough, if you will. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I feel like Spanish is a big part of the culture for sure of Latinidad, but it's not necessary at all. And I mean, if you think about it, like the vast majority of us have lost our indigenous languages. Like, why are we all fighting over who knows this colonizer language more? You know, it's like for sure it's like very, very, it's ours now, right? Like we own it. There's all this dialogue of like we're La Raza and Spanish is ours now and blah blah blah. But we've all lost language. We've all lost so much culture and languages, and we don't even know how much we've lost. So I mean, I think that's silly. I think language is just one little piece of the puzzle. There's so many different ways that you can be culturally, Latinx.
Yeah.
There's the food, just the focus on family structures, just so many different things.
Yeah, I feel like that, the No Sabo Kid stuff is like on a bigger scale, like what we do, like in our families, like I grew up with tough love. Like, if you messed up, we're gonna laugh at you, we're gonna make fun of you, like, but that's how we showed our love to each other, right? And so that's almost that, like on a bigger scale, where like we're kind of giving tough love to like strangers across the internet and making fun of them because they don't know Spanish or whatever. But also, at least for where I'm from, I would say sometimes like it's all tough love, and it's like sometimes I just need actual love. And on a grander scale, we forget that too, that it's like, okay, that's funny calling somebody no sabo kid, but also like maybe let's take some time and be like, hey, try Duolingo, trying to help them, spread love their way too, and I personally, I feel like I definitely grew up like in between two worlds because I came to the US when I was 6. I mean, my parents just spoke Spanish at home, and then we went back to Mexico for 2 weeks every Christmas. But I assimilated pretty quickly, especially through music, and so now, being away from home and being here and in college, I didn't really speak Spanish much, and I've lost a lot of it as well. I go home and like sometimes I'm like guessing at words, and I'll just make up a word hoping that it's right, and my parents like make fun of me for it, like they correct me and they make fun of me for it. So sometimes at home I don't feel like I'm like Mexican enough still, or like I'm not like culturally enough with my family. But then I hear when I'm surrounded by like a bunch of like American people, and I'll say American people, not just like white people or non-Latino people, but I went to school in Mexico. Like Spanish was my first language. My brain was wired that way, so even as an adult, I still like sometimes say things that come out weirdly because my brain is wired that way too, in a Spanish kind of way. So I'll express the detail of something backwards, like saying over, like stuff like that. And,
azul pantalones instead of like pantalones azul.
Right. So it's like my brain's just wired that way. So sometimes like I just don't think about it and it just comes out. So then to people, that really shows my like Latino-ness, and then people then kind of other me because of that. So I feel like I'm not enough on both worlds sometimes.
Well, that whole example and your question in general makes me think of the Edward James Olmos quote that we got to be more Mexican than the Mexicans and more American than the Americans, right? The plight of the Mexican American. That's exactly how I feel. If I want my Colombian cousins to think I'm Colombian, I got to be more Colombian than them.
Mhm.
And if I want my Mexican cousins to think I'm Mexican, I got to be more Mexican than them.
Yeah.
So it's like Mexican American, not
Uh-huh.
Colombian. I think that says it.
But I think a beauty of a group like this and other kind of like Latinx, like diaspora or whatever that I'm part of, is that you are your own group. Like you don't have to be whatever enough or this enough. Like the biculturalism is the culture.
Yeah.
And you know, that's its own thing. And I think when you get into those groups, like you can finally just feel like that ease of like, okay, we're all like this. We all have both cultures.
I think, and you know, back to one of your earlier questions, I think that's also what connected all of us from the beginning, is that we all experienced that kind of like being in between worlds kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's something that like I always love talking to guests about, because it's something for sure I've always had to deal with. And like when you talked about like the tough love from parents and like sometimes just needing regular love, like yeah, sometimes like they really put it on you, and like they just don't see anything wrong with it. It's kind of like how they grew up, and like they're just used to roasting each other, but not at the end being like, oh haha, you know, like, you know, adding some encouragement. It's just like, all right, that's the end of it. Let's move on to the next topic. It's like, man, my feelings are hurt.
Yeah, like I saw a post recently that was like how Mexicans give a compliment, and it's like, no está tan pendejo como se ve. Always like backhanded insult.
A backhanded, yeah.
There's an Asian comedian. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. She's really, really funny, but she made a joke in her stand-up show. She has a joke that I'm like, that like a Latino could be making that joke. But the joke is, she's like, you know, in her family where she grew up, which is also my family where I grew up, they're like so generous, and like I go to see my grandma and they're like, ooh, eat, come más, like have another plate, like, oh no, you look like you need to eat, you're too skinny, like eat, and they're always like, eat, here's more, and then like the next week they're like, oh, you got fat.
That's so
yeah, that's the big one for them. Like it's never enough. Like I remember them telling me like, oh man, you're too skinny, you need to start eating more. I started eating more. Oh my god, you are so fat. Like there's no winning. Somebody welcome on in, Leo. How you doing? Welcome. They said, I have a challenge for our guests. Can each one take 1 minute and improv roast one of their parents? So before any of that, is that something that happens often? Like, since people know you're improv actors, like, are they just like, hey, right now on the spot, can you do some improv? And does that ever get annoying?
Not really.
No.
I have, but in interviews, not in parties. In interviews, we've done three other interview type of stuff, and it was like, all right, do a scene for us right now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here we go. But not in parties or anything. People are just like, cool.
People are cool with it,
I
yeah.
don't know that I could like really roast my parents. They're actually like, they're the opposite of the like, you know, insulting you. They're like super cheerleadery. Like they like, even now, like they'll send me this long text and they'll be like, Laurita, we're so proud of you, mija. Like everything you do, like you're just so committed, and you
That's
have so
sweet.
much work integrity, and like,
Uh-huh.
I mean, for a long time, like I was a stay-at-home mom, like that's all I was up to, and like even in that, you know, where a lot of people are just kind of mean about it, and they like think you're not doing anything. Like they would just be just flinging out all this compliment and pride my way, you know, like no matter what I'm doing, like they've always been like that. So I know I had like kind of a different experience. Like there were no chanclazos or anything. They were just it's like living with the Brady Bunch parents. That was my parents. Yeah, it was, I think, a little different.
That's
Well,
good.
For me, I feel like I've turned a lot of how my parents were kind of back on them at like now where I'm in life. So I grew up with my parents being very harsh. Like, I mean, I was, you know, a bit of an obnoxious kid sometimes when I was younger because I wanted to get attention because my parents didn't give me that attention, right? But what my mom would always say to me and my brother and my sister would be, calladito te ves más bonito.
Sí.
Oh, damn. Just be quiet. You look better when you're quiet.
Right. So that, and then when we would like get hurt, or if we're like crying about something, my mom and dad would be like, ¿Dónde está la sangre? ¿Dónde está la sangre?
Like, yeah, it's like, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So now when I argue with my parents and my mom's really mad about something, like if I got a tattoo, like what she has I'm mad about, I'm like, ¿Dónde está la sangre? Like, why is this such a big deal?
Yeah. Flipped it.
Well, your answer kind of gets to what I wanted to say, which is I don't know if I would just like do a little improv scene on roasting my parents, but the viewer question definitely made me think I could totally do a scene as my parent. And I've never thought that before.
Yeah.
So him saying that or them saying that was really cool because it's like, that's a good idea. I could step out on the scene as my dad angry and I could kill it for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good. So it's good. It's always taking inspiration from little dialogues or little things, and like I hope you somehow incorporate that into the performances for sure. That was Queen's husband.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, that's Queen's husband. Great dude. Was that?
Latino?
Yeah, Queen and Leo are Mexican American as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. The homies from down in Austin. I gotta go visit them and then come see y'all. Definitely come see some of that. And then, do you incorporate like audience? Like, does the audience speak throughout the performance? Like, is there like a back and forth?
Before. We get tons and tons of input. Who's seen novelas? Okay, what stuff you've seen in novelas? What kind of professions? What kind of this? What kind of that? Okay, yeah. And we're all taking notes. Then the ultimate final one, where does this novela take place today? Where does this one start? You know, horse farm, dentist, whatever. And then it goes from there. But after the start, they don't speak anymore.
But they set the scene.
Literally, we get them talking, they set the scene.
We try to incorporate the things that they say that they've seen in telenovelas, because that is one of our early prompts. So they might be like, "Oh, evil twins,"
Right.
And like, let's say thruples. Well, then we'll try to do. At some point, we'll try to throw in a subplot with like some evil twins, some thruples, whatever it is that they say.
Our most recent show had 2 suggestions that had the cast kind of tingling, and it was either private school or bus stop. And when we couldn't decide, the host said, "Okay, it's a bus stop in front of a private school."
There you go.
Everything was a callback to both, so the audience just kept giggling at like callbacks.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always great. That's what I love about like even this is live. Like I have written questions, but a lot of it is coming just from like me reading the chat and like people participating and suggesting things. Question again. Yeah, have y'all thought about using OpenAI to create improv scripts or for it to help in any way at your performance?
Well, scripts probably a bad idea because we don't do scripted, right? We're improv, right? But prompts,
yeah.
that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Ask it for some prompts, see what it says,
and then go from there.
I'm sure there's already improv troops out there that have come up with that idea. You know,
Have incorporated it.
AI prompt.
Well, I am a little
on
the school of AI is a little creepy. AI is a little scary right now. It's going very fast. It's making
Too
music.
fast.
It's making text to video. It's doing images. It's doing everything that a lot of artists get paid to do. But I think we will become symbiotic before we become usurped. So I think it's like lawyers with AI will replace lawyers without AI. So I think artists with AI will replace artists without AI. I think it's an interesting question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely moving like way faster than like any regulation or any like laws around it. I just saw a video the other day of like a full like Kendrick Lamar song by some guy just having a voice filter on. He made the beat and then he just wrote out the song and like it sounded exactly like it. You know, you could tell a little bit between pauses, but I'm like, this is now. Give it a few years for them to like really fix those kinks and like you won't be able to tell who made what. And like just the thought of having to copyright your likeness or your voice or like that's wild to me. And I just don't know. Yeah.
Have you seen the Seinfeld show thing?
Yeah, it's a full like Seinfeld AI show that's just like 24. Yeah. That's
That's what's
wild.
going.
Very, very wild. And before we move on, I just wanted, since we were talking about your parents, I had asked if you guys could think of any, because I have this segment called the Chancleta Chronicles, where we kind of just describe stories of like any time that like we might have gotten reprimanded or gotten in trouble as kids. The chancleta is like a real big symbol in the community of just like, damn, you did something wrong and you got hit. So like, any stories that you'd like to share?
100%.
I'll go first since I'm not saying anything. Okay, so I never got any chancletadas or anything, but there's one travesura that like it sticks really in my mind. And we were living in Cairo. And in Cairo, a lot of the apartment buildings have what's called a boab who lives on the bottom floor. And it's usually an elderly man. And like that's now his kind of like retirement job is just keeping track of the property. You know, it's pretty low, low maintenance for them. Just kind of keeping everyone feeling secure. And the owners of the apartment building that we lived in had a beautiful garden. And I really wanted to play in there. I was about 8 years old. So I wanted to play in there and he wouldn't let me. So my friend and I decided that we hated him. And she suggested like this voodoo procedure where she made like this little mat, like toothpick body of his and then broke his leg in half. It was terrible. And then put it in this little container in my room. And then we waited and like nothing bad happened to us. And like we weren't able to like go into the garden. So I went up to the roof of the apartment building, and there was like this kind of like corrugated like roof thing above his little house that was just to the side, like kind of just abutting the wall there. And I saw it, and I was like, I'm gonna get this rock. For some reason, there was like this big flat rock on the roof. I'm just gonna get this rock, and I'm gonna throw it on his roof and scare him because I hate him so much. And I didn't realize the force that rock would go down. I like flung it over. Yeah, I flung it over the edge. This was my first physics lesson, and it just went straight through. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. Like my mom's gonna kill me because my dad is the softie, and my mom was like, the strict.
Tougher.
So I went running downstairs as fast as I could and came into my apartment. And my mom said, "What did you do?" And I was like, "How would she know?" Like
they
she was
know.
washing dishes at in the window, and she's like, "I saw something fall by the window while I was here washing the dishes. Confess," kind of thing. So and that's kind of how my mom talks. So if I'm improvising my mom, that's totally my mom. She's like, "Confess." So anyway, I told her everything. I just told her everything. And she's like, "Well, that's not even the side of the building that he lives in. You threw it down and like it just landed and scratched the owner's car like all the way down."
Okay.
Oh no.
So, I know. So, and they were the sweetest people. I felt really bad. So she's like, "Now you're going to have to go apologize." So, and she's like, "And I'm not coming with you. You're going to go down there. You're going to tell them what you did and you're going to apologize." Because my parents were very consequence, oriented.
Accountability.
Yes. So I went down there. We went to get the owner's wife was like really sweet. We went and looked at, yep, sure enough, it did scratch her car. It went right by the car and just kind of like went whoosh, like all their paint was scratched up. And she's like, I'd apologize. And she's like, "It's okay. Like these things happen."
Oh.
And she pulled out this tray of Turkish delights.
Oh.
And she fed them to me. And it was just the loveliest experience. And I told her I told her everything. And she's like, "You can play in our garden whenever you want."
That's lucky.
I got rewarded
That's
for my
lucky.
evilness.
That's great. At first, I was gonna be like, "Man, that's why you always play the villains because you had that time." That was the villain origin story, but it had a twist where everything was really nice, and you saw the humanity in people.
That's funny.
There were a lot of lessons in that experience. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
that's
Thank you
great.
for sharing that one.
Funny.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a handful, but one that I remember off the top of my head. So I have a brother that is 3 years younger than me. And like I said, my family and I would go back to Mexico every single Christmas. And my family is Catholic, so that's what I grew up with. And we have very like specific traditions where I'm from. Like every December, there's like a celebration for La Virgen de Guadalupe specifically, and around Christmas, there's like ceremonies around like baby Jesus and stuff. And so one of those things in Mexico that every Christmas we had was the sparklers, light sparklers.
Mhm.
There were like a thing, the luces de bengala, I think
Mhm.
that's what they're called. Um, so in Mexico, at our house in Mexico, we have the backyard is a corral. It's just like a big field, and it was really really dark. And I was playing with my brother and some friends and cousins and stuff, and we were like, "Ooh, let's take your sparkler and run out to the pitch black corral and see how far you can get before it goes out, and if you can come back." Like it was like trying to test how scared we would be and stuff. And
Mhm.
it was my brother's turn. He went and he was taking a while, so I set mine on fire and it's sparkling, and then I like run towards the corral, and we ran into each other, and I stabbed him. And
Oh.
I go in, but I kind of stabbed him. He has a scar on his chest,
Oh, no.
so
Oh
and
shoot.
I got beat for that.
So y'all had to go tell your parents?
I mean, he was crying, like he was like hurt, like we were like early teens, like he's probably still like single digit like age. Yeah, but he was crying. My parents very easily found out, and yeah, I got for that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Damn.
Apparently, that's not the only scar that I've given my brother.
Oh man, damn. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm sure your parents were definitely pissed. Like, what are y'all doing out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I have a couple for sure, but one thing is we're definitely aware that the chancla is a thing, even if Laura didn't get it. We use it all the time in our shows. We even have a sound effect for the whoosh of a chancla in case we ever pull it out. Tech knows to whoosh that. Woo, 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 woo. But so my mom hit us with the chancla all my life. My dad would hit us with the belt. So if my mom threw a chancla or hit us, we got lucky. If my mom said, "Wait till your dad gets home," that sucked.
Yeah.
And we got to an age where instead of the belt, he would like just clock us like on the shoulder or on the head, just one. And I remember we were in Mexico City and we went to a gag store and I bought stink bombs, pedo de brujas, like witch farts as we call them in Spanish. And then we were flying back to the States. And we were old enough where my dad didn't have to get all the seats together. He got whatever's available. The parents are maybe 10 rows up front. The children are all in the back. And my older brothers, picking on the younger one, were like, throw one, do one, go to the bathroom, throw it, do it, do it. So I went to the bathroom. I pop it on the ground. Most of the liquid gets on my shoe.
Oh, no.
I drag that back to the front of the airplane to where the whole airplane is now stinking like stink bomb. And I remember we sit down and we start laughing. And without saying a word, my dad gets up from 10 rows in front. He walks to the back and bas, bas, bas. 3 clocks to our head. We're all just grabbing ourselves. The whole plane is looking back at us. He didn't have to ask the question. He knew who threw a stink bomb on this plane. He goes back, he sits down, and the rest of the plane, everyone is dizzy, and my brothers and I are just holding our noggin.
Damn, that plane must have been extremely upset with the odor, man. Oh man, yeah, I really appreciate those stories. I know to people maybe not in our community, they might hear that and be like, "Oh my God, like your dad would hit you like that," like
We were talking.
Yeah, and so I'm always like real aware of that when I ask guests like to bring those stories, because I know other people will hear this and I don't want them to think like, oh man, like those parents are real bad. Like they like, I think it's something that happens in the Hispanic community a lot, that like sometimes it goes too far for sure. It's like some people, like something my wife just said, like, wait till your dad gets home, has always been the scariest phrase that still haunts me to this day. Like, and, there's a lot of trauma. So whenever I ask guests this, I'm like, just any lighthearted stories and anything that you're comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable with, totally understand, because like, it is different for a lot of people how they were treated and the effects that it had later on in their lives.
Well, we literally talked about that right before we got on. We do live in an age today where they sound so much worse than they used to before. I think if you are super against hitting your kids, don't hit your kids. I think that makes perfect sense, and live your life. But me, personally, I am neither resentful of my parents. I think I had an amazing childhood, nor do I think I was negatively impacted. I'm one of 7, and the 7 of us today, I would argue, are stand-up citizens, right? So We have a very good relationship with my dad. I never tell these stories as a scarring. I tell them as funnies for sure.
Yeah.
But I get it. It's different. It's different culturally, and it's a different time too.
100%. Now let me just read a couple stuff here. Awesome. So I think I forgot to mention this earlier. So we do most of this live. However, we are going to have a part where we just go offline. I just record it. It's just like bonus content that I have. So just letting everybody in the chat know we will be going offline in a bit. So where could people like find out more about you? Where could they see? I know you only have like a few full shows up on that YouTube. Is it more so like something you got to go see in person, or how could people check you out more?
Yeah, for sure. Mostly we're here in Austin. We are, all our social media is at Escándalo Improv. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter and Facebook.
Instagram.
And Instagram. Did I say the same thing twice? Yes. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Yes. And we have a couple videos up here and there, but
we put full shows up on YouTube. If you're not in Austin, please check them out. I think you would have a blast. But there's nothing like live improv where you can have had an effect on the story and stuff. If you're in Austin, please come to our next show, March 25th. Right, March 25th is our next house show, and we got a lot of stuff planned. So please follow us at Escándalo Improv.
Awesome. All right, so we are going to go offline and have like another maybe like 15 to 20 minutes of just bonus content that you could access once I get unlazy enough to set up this Patreon. I've been saying I was going to do it for a few weeks, and I'm like, I'll do it after the Escándalo episode. That way, like, it gives, I just want to have like a good amount of bonus content. So when people go on there, they're like, damn, this is like worth it. Like, I want to check this out. So thank you so much. Any final words to the audience before we head out of here?
Thank you for tuning in. Tune into the bonus content where we're going to be doing amazing stuff that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, get
We're
that
gonna be
Patreon.
making you laugh and then making you cry all at the same time.
Awesome. So let me just mute myself here real quick. I'm going to say goodbye, get this out of here. Oh, real quick. Telma said, where are the best tacos, San Antonio or Austin? I think that's a good way to end.
Those are fighting words.
Personally, I would say San Antonio.
San Antonio.
San Antonio. Okay. Oh, Queen, what do you think? To all my other Austinites in here, San Antonio or Austin for the tacos?
Those are fighting words.
What would the difference be? Because so like we just went to Arizona pretty recently, and they were explaining how the tacos in Austin are real different than like some of the Southwest ones where they're a little bit like smaller and like I guess like they bring you out all of the ingredients and you kind of make them for yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess Austin was built by hippies. Austin's pretty white. San Antonio has a huge Latino population.
Super mixed up.
I mean, in Austin, there's like a handful of like really good, authentic like Mexican places that aren't Tex-Mex or not Tex-Mex. They're like Mexican places. San Antonio, you're gonna find like tons of like really authentic Mexican restaurants.
Yeah, I'd say the population skews toward maybe San Antonio winning.
Okay, yeah, they're saying San Antonio in the chat as well. They're saying Austin got small ass overpriced tacos, but you go to the hood in ATX and they're good.
It's because it's a thing. It's a contention. It's a fight. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm. Damn.
But we have good food in Austin.
Oh, for sure.
There's amazing food. A lot of really unique things here.
Yeah, I imagine.
Tacos for sure.
Awesome.
Within Tex-Mex, there's the more Americanized Tex-Mex, and then there's the more like what I like to say is like the northern region of Mexican food, which extends into South Texas from North Mexico. Awesome. And that's more what you'll find in San Antonio.
Yeah, I want to visit both. I want to visit me both and just go food hopping, just eat tacos from each little place. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. We are going to head out of here. Please do make sure to keep updated. I did launch the podcast. It's now in audio format, so it is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all the good platforms where if you don't want to watch video, you could check it out there, just audio format. So thank you all so much for coming through, and we will see you next time for the live. As I said, I think that live is the best way to do it, to be in here and be part of the conversation, ask questions, get to know the people. But I understand not everybody can make it, so audio's there, and this will always be up on YouTube. So y'all have an amazing night.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
At Escándalo.